Today's sponsor is Blue Chew, and they're giving you your first shipment totally free. All you have to do is pay $5 for shipping. Go to bluechew.com, use promo code DAVID. I've put the link right underneath this video. So we've been waiting for it, and it's happening. Donald Trump is now publicly saying he believes that foreign countries, he won't say which ones, will be rigging the upcoming presidential election against him. This is particularly funny, to use a word that really lightens the situation. It's really tragic, but it's sort of funny for Trump to predict that other countries will rig the election against him, since he has repeatedly said he would consider accepting help from other countries, and according to John Bolton, even asked China for help. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's wait for a moment, because there's a few stories here. First is that, in general, Donald Trump has appeared to be particularly on tilt over the last few weeks. On tilt is a term from chess and poker, sometimes from other games, where when you take a bad beat, you make a mistake, or you appear to get unlucky, or you make an error, then it influences your future behavior, and you behave even more erratically during future games and moments. And that seems to be what's going on with Donald Trump. He had his failed rally on Saturday in Tulsa, Oklahoma, slumping into the White House with a tan-stained white shirt out of his helicopter on late Saturday night, reportedly yelling at his staff for the lack of turnout. We covered it all yesterday. Meanwhile, he sees that polling is not looking so good. And now Donald Trump is loudly and wildly proclaiming that foreign countries are going to rig the election against him. And this is another instance of Donald Trump, maybe. We don't really know what he's doing, and it may not even be a thought out strategy. But he may be laying the groundwork to contest the results of the election in the future. When he loses, he could argue he didn't really lose because it was rigged. And he's been talking about it being rigged and priming his followers to believe it will be rigged for months. Trump writing yesterday on Twitter, quote, this is all caps, by the way. I'm not going to do anything in my reading to reflect that it's all caps. Just know that it's all caps. Rigged 2020 election. Millions of mail-in ballots will be printed by foreign countries and others. It will be the scandal of our times. Then tweeting minutes later, because of, all caps, mail-in ballots, 2020 will be the most rigged capital E election in our nation's history. No apostrophe on nations. Unless this stupidity is ended. We voted during World War I and World War II with no problem, but now they are using COVID in order to cheat by using mail-ins. That's the president, by the way. That's not some conspiracy theorist who's like a third stringer Alex Jones tweeting that. That's the president of the United States, at least for a few more months. So remember, he spent the last 3.5 years arguing that an election he won was rigged against him. So of course he's going to say that it was rigged if indeed he loses. And this is a particularly unhinged claim. Foreign countries are going to print ballots and what? Fill them in and send them to local polling precincts? Like, what's funny about this is that Trump knows so little about how voting works that he seems to think this could be an actual thing that could be done. Like, Trump has been on this unhinged crusade against vote by mail for a couple of months now, saying it leads to fraud and so on and so forth. Here he says the fraud would be foreign countries would print massive numbers of ballots, all, perfectly formatted to match the format of any particular precinct, fill them in as votes for Biden, and then send them by mail. Now, absentee ballots, as you may know, are only sent to registered voters. Like, if you send in 1,000 ballots saying, oh, Joe Smith voted for Biden, and Nancy Smith voted for Biden, and Joe Smith Jr. voted for Biden, and Joe Smith III. Like, when they're received, they're checked against a registered voter list in that precinct. If that person isn't actually registered to vote in that precinct, then the ballot is thrown out. If the person already submitted a ballot, then another one coming in with their same name is going to be thrown out and not counted. This would be an insanely stupid way to try to steal an election. And then, by the way, so layer one is Trump is on tilt. Layer two is this is a dumb way to steal an election. Number three is it's particularly stunning that Trump is decrying foreign interference, because you might remember that in an interview with George Stephanopoulos, he was actually asked, if Russia offered help, dirt, so to speak, If China offered it, would you accept it? And Trump said that he might. Let me remind you about that interview from a few months back.
This is somebody that said, we have information on your opponent. Oh, let me call the FBI. Give me a break. Life doesn't work that way.
The FBI director says that's what should happen.
The FBI director is wrong.
Your campaign this time around, if foreigners, if Russia, if China, if someone else offers you information on an opponent, should they accept it or should they call the FBI?
I think maybe you do both. I think you might want to listen. There's nothing wrong with listening. If somebody called from a country, Norway, we have information on your opponent. Oh, I think I'd want to hear it.
You want that kind of interference in our elections?
It's not an interference. They have information. I think I'd take it. If I thought there was something wrong, I'd go maybe to the FBI if I thought there was something wrong. But when somebody comes up with Oppo research, right? They come up with Oppo research. Oh, let's call the FBI. The FBI doesn't have enough agents to take care of it. But you go and talk honestly to congressmen. They all do it. They always have. And that's the way it is. It's called Oppo research.
Now, the reason Trump is doing this is very clear. He's seen the polls and he's scared. Publicly he claims every poll is fake if it says that he's losing, even when it's a Fox News poll, even when it's a Rasmussen poll. But privately, we've heard reports that Trump is absolutely furious with his staff. He doesn't understand how he's losing so badly. Fox News had Biden ahead by 12 last Thursday. Quinnipiac had Biden ahead by 8. CNBC has Biden plus 10. Economist has Biden up 9. New poll out of New Hampshire says Biden is plus 7. That was tied almost in 2016. Poll says Biden plus 7. There's a Florida poll that says Biden plus 7. I find that a little bit hard to believe. But then a tip poll has Biden plus 11 in Florida. It's insane is the point, and we all have to vote. But clearly Donald Trump is triggered by the polling. So now we'll wait and see what happens in November. But the important thing to address here is that if Donald Trump thinks foreign countries are going to rig the election against him, why hasn't he done anything about it? If it was rigged in 2016 against Trump, and he believes it'll be rigged in 2020 against him, why is it that for the last 3.5 years, despite numerous attempts from mostly Democrats to actually toughen up and harden our election systems so they are not subject to foreign interference, why has Trump opposed all of those measures? Why has Mitch McConnell opposed all of those measures and ideas that have been put forward? It's because any good story needs an enemy. And here the enemy is so-called foreign votes, mail-in votes, double voting, et cetera, et cetera. It's not real. And the final sort of insanity and hypocrisy here is once again that this is something that Trump allegedly went out and solicited. According to John Bolton, it's not just what Trump said to George Stephanopoulos. Well, if they sent it to me, I'd look at it. It's actually, the allegation is that Trump went to the Chinese president and said, listen, I need farmers to help get me reelected in November of 2020. Can you start buying more stuff from our farmers to help me get reelected? It's not just he would be willing to accept it. It's he allegedly went out and solicited it. And that's what makes this all so insane. Now, let's talk about the next level of crazy, which is Donald Trump coming out against the First Amendment here in the United States. I didn't even get a chance to talk about this yesterday, but it's absolutely baffling and disgusting. At his rally on Saturday night, Donald Trump came out violently against the First Amendment to the Constitution of the United States. Donald Trump said in Tulsa on Saturday night that, by the way, stop emailing me saying I know it's Tulsa. Yeah, come on. We're just having a good time. Trump said on Saturday night that he wants flag burning to be punishable by a year in prison, despite the fact that the Supreme Court has said multiple times flag burning is a protected activity. You can't punish people for burning a flag. It's a type of speech. Check it out. Check out Donald Trump's audience cheering for this. Supposed constitutional conservatives cheering for the attempted destruction of the First Amendment by their dear leader, who they will, of course, unquestioningly vote for in November. Take a look.
2 days ago, leftist radicals in Portland, Oregon, ripped down a statue of George Washington and wrapped it in an American flag and set the American flag on fire. Democrat. All Democrat. Everything I tell you is Democrat. And you know, we ought to do something, Mr. Senators. We have two great senators. We ought to come up with legislation that if you burn the American flag, you go to jail for 1 year. 1 year.
The crowd not even hesitating. I mean, so again, so-called conservatives who support the Constitution cheering for Trump suggesting we punish a constitutionally protected activity with a year in prison. Now, it's also important that I want to focus on the flag burning, but there's also a deliberate conflation that Trump does. Trump starts by talking about tearing down a statue, but then he says burning the flag should be punishable by a year in prison. Tearing down a statue can be a property crime, right? That's a very different thing than constitutionally protected speech. Burning a flag, stomping on a flag, that is not only not a crime, it's specifically protected activity. It's a form of speech protected by the First Amendment. And this is not an obscure legal decision. Like, this is widely known legal precedent. The Supreme Court decided in 1989 in Texas v. Johnson, and it reaffirmed it in 1990 in U.S. v. Eichmann, that any prohibitions on so-called desecration of flags are unconstitutional. It's just flat out unconstitutional. Burning a flag is a form of speech. It's symbolic speech. Burning American flags is a form of speech in protest movements that go back a long time. So what Trump is asking for and what his audience is ravenously cheering for, it is unconstitutional. Will his followers care that Trump is proposing something unconstitutional? No, mostly they won't. You've got actual principled constitutional conservatives. Now, when I say principled, I don't mean I agree with their views. But what I mean is they don't abandon their principles when Trump says the opposite and then cheer it the way people in the crowd are doing. They are sometimes coming out, like George Will has come out and said he's got to go. Trump's got to go. I don't really agree with George Will on most things, but George Will at least abides by the principles he has identified as being important to him. And that includes that what's in the Constitution, at least as he sees it, matters. Now, it's important, I think, to mention there are limitations on flag burning. Like, you can't go onto a neighbor's property and drop a burning flag on their wooden porch, right? But that's not the flag burning that's illegal there. It's the trespassing and the arson. Whether you drop, papers or a burning flag, if you do that, there are other crimes you are committing, but that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about just the burning of a flag. Trump kept going, calling for exactly the type of legislation that the Supreme Court has already said multiple times is unconstitutional. Take a look.
We should have legislation that if somebody wants to burn the American flag and stomp on it, but just burn it, they go to jail for 1 year, okay?
This is what I call dumb red meat. We talk about red meat and dog whistles in American politics, and Republicans very often throw them out. This is dumb red meat, and Trump has actually been using this dumb red meat for a long time. Here's just one video of Trump from 2016. You'll notice, by the way, sounding far more articulate, saying something similar about flag burning.
See people ripping up the American flag, like that flag, beautiful. When I think it's a disgrace, okay? And you can say what you want, free speech, it's all wonderful, everything's wonderful. I'm a big believer in free speech, but maybe we're going to be putting something in to see if we can do something about it, because this is a special case. And when I see people burning the American flag and then stepping on it as it's burning up and then stomping on it and stepping on it on the ground, I don't think I remember that when I was growing up. Is that right? How many of you guys are young like me? Remember when we were very young? I don't remember that happening.
Yeah, so dumb red meat, it fires people up, but it also sort of confuses them since they thought they were for free speech and that they were for the Constitution. I guess they thought Trump was also for those things. And then Trump comes out with a year in prison for burning the flag. So understand, I guess the takeaway is, first of all, this didn't get nearly enough attention. This is the president saying cancel the First Amendment, at least the part of it that he doesn't like. But understand how backwards things are, that we have a White House that dropped the ball on coronavirus. Trump admitted he wanted to reduce testing early on so that he would look better. We have protests against vile police brutality. We have nearly 20% real unemployment rate. And the controversies that Trump wants to focus on are, do people kneel during the anthem or not? And did somebody burn a flag? It's not just transparent. It's actually pathetic because, as I said yesterday, he has no case. He has no coherent case for why he should be reelected. And so he's talking about flag burning and kneeling during protests, kneeling during the national anthem in sports as well. It's fully authoritarian. It's also really dumb. And hopefully this country is never in a place where flag burning seriously has a chance at becoming criminalized, even under the relatively conservative Supreme Court that we have right now. I don't see any way that there's any shot at flag burning being criminalized, as it should be. Let me know your thoughts. I am on Twitter at @DPakman. Remember that you can subscribe free to the Daily David Pakman Show audio podcast. It's the earliest. If you look at all the things we publish, Facebook clips, YouTube clips, etc., the earliest thing to publish is the daily audio podcast, which is available for free on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, Pandora, iHeartRadio, Spreaker, Podbean, Spotify. As you can tell, it's too available at this point, really.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
This episode was sponsored by Blue Chew, giving my viewers their first shipment totally free when you go to bluechew.com and use promo code DAVID. It's just a reality that many men, regardless of age, can sometimes benefit from a boost in confidence, a little bit of performance help. Blue Chew is the first chewable tablet with the same FDA-approved ingredients as Viagra and Cialis. Blue Chew being a chewable tablet means it starts working twice as fast as a pill. It's prescribed online. You spend a couple minutes with a short questionnaire. A licensed doctor reviews the information, decides if a prescription is right for you. It's then shipped directly to your home in discreet packaging, no awkward visits to the doctor's office or pharmacy. Plus, it's also cheaper than getting it at a pharmacy. When you go to bluechew.com and use promo code DAVID, you will get your first shipment completely free. Just pay $5 shipping. That's promo code DAVID to get your first shipment of Blue Chew completely free. And I've put the link right underneath this video.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
Okay, today's new members of the day are Robin Pelfrey and Carl Haglund. You may never have heard of membership. I know it comes up so infrequently on the program, but we're mostly funded by members. Membership just means you go to joinpakman.com and you sign up. It's quick, it's easy. You get the daily commercial-free audio and video streams of the show, as well as the world-famous award-winning, only awards we give out, but still award-winning bonus show, where producer Pat joins me to discuss more of the news of the day. Grab a membership at joinpakman.com. Stay a member, and you may someday be the longtime sustaining member of the day. Today, that's Natasha Glover, who's been with us almost 5 years. In news that will surprise absolutely no one, but yet is still being misreported somehow, we now have 8 Trump staffers who attended the Trump rally in Tulsa on Saturday, or who were there that day. Some of them were actually sent home early because they got the virus, who have tested positive for coronavirus. Remember that on Saturday, we learned that 6 Trump staffers tested positive for coronavirus. Trump was furious that the news got out that they had tested positive. We now got a new statement from the Trump campaign, which says that, quote, after another round of testing for campaign staff in Tulsa, 2 additional members of the advance team tested positive for the coronavirus. These staff members attended the rally, but were wearing masks during the entire event. Upon the positive tests, the campaign immediately activated established quarantine and contact tracing protocols. So in the midst of all of this, 2 Secret Service agents also tested positive for coronavirus. So we have to clarify the misinformation. We've been dealing with this virus now for 4 months? that we know of in reality, even that we knew about even longer in reality. And you're immediately seeing every nonsense reaction that you can imagine from Trumpists and from some other people on the right to this news. So first of all, this line about the last two staffers got the virus, even though they wore masks during the entire event. This is causing some people to say, see, look, masks don't even do anything. Masks do work. We have a new study that says the faster countries obtained widespread numbers of masks, the faster they suppressed the spread of coronavirus. Also remember that the rally didn't require masks. So whether masks do or don't work, which they do, the rally goers weren't wearing masks. But the most important element of confusion is that nobody is saying any of these staffers caught the virus at the rally. In fact, 6 of the 8 staffers who tested positive were part of the actually, they were all part of the advance team, but 6 of them left before the rally even started. In other words, clearly they got the virus sometime last week, incubated it for 48 hours, a few days, and then tested positive on Saturday and were sent home. These other 2 staffers, we have no reason to believe that they actually caught this at the rally. Not to mention, they could have caught it in Tulsa, but not at the rally where they were wearing masks and instead somewhere else. We have something called an incubation period. So right away, this is bad news, right? This is more proof the rally shouldn't have happened because the rally didn't require people to wear masks. And you have these low information Trumpists who say, this is proof you don't even need masks because they don't work. No, that's not the right story. That's not the right story at all. Now, what we should be seeing as the takeaway from news that 8 Trump staffers plus 2 Secret Service agents caught the virus around the time of the rally is that the rally was a really bad idea. With 6,200 people there, plus countless staff and law enforcement and others, what are the odds that these 8 people were the only people in the place with the virus that day? Let's grant that these 8 didn't catch it at the rally, because I don't think they did. There are obviously other people who were there that day who also were incubating the virus and they had caught it elsewhere, and nobody was required to wear masks. Now, that being said, no method is 100% foolproof, right? Masks are useful if everybody's wearing them. That dramatically reduces the chance of spread, but it's just a numbers game. If you put 6,200 people indoors, even if they all wear masks, someone is likely to catch the virus through one of those less likely contagion methods. We've learned over the last few months, surface contagion is not that common, right? Early on, there was a lot about sanitizing and bleaching your vegetables and food and boxes of takeout, all of this stuff. Turns out that the surface contagion is actually quite rare. But if you have 6,200 people together, you can have a 1 in 6,000 incident, and that still means someone catches the virus through a surface contact. Someone takes their mask off for a second and sneezes on a door handle. Someone 15 seconds later opens the door and then has to adjust their mask and touches their eyes, and there you've got it, right? Even a very unlikely event, when you have 6,200 people together, becomes far more likely. This is where the rules come from, or guidelines come from, about it's better if you're not in groups of more than 10. Why? Because with fewer than 10 people, a 1 in 1,000 contagion method is very unlikely to happen. With 6,200 people, a 1 in 1,000 contagion method or risk is likely to now have 6 instances of contagion. I think that most of you sort of understand the math. When will we know the effect of the rally on cases in Oklahoma? We may never know. We have to understand that, because unless we get contact tracing news, because cases are exploding in general in Oklahoma, we may never really know the effect of that one rally. As you can see in Oklahoma, we're putting a case chart up on the screen. The cases were already spiking from the day before the rally, and they've continued to spike. It takes about 10 to 14 days to know the full effect of contagion from any particular event. So we may never really know, because cases are spiking in Oklahoma in general. Now, some good news from here in Massachusetts. We had the protests against police brutality 2 weeks ago. Almost everybody was wearing masks, and Massachusetts numbers continue to improve. So what we are learning again is the masks do work, which we knew already, and that is reassuring, to say the least. cornered rats start to behave really erratically. And that's what we're seeing right now with the president. As questions continue to grow about Donald Trump's mental and physical health, as his polling continues to collapse, as the world continues to point and laugh at him, as coronavirus tragically rages and kills people in the U.S., despite many countries having it completely under control, Donald Trump has now wildly and without evidence accused former President Barack Obama of treason. Now, we've seen Trump now for a while go on about Obama's supposed crimes. Remember, Trump talked for a while about Hillary Clinton's supposed crimes. That seems to have been forgotten. And Trump even said not long ago that Barack Obama committed the greatest political crime in American history. But when he was asked specifically what was that crime, he had nothing. That was then. He has said now in an interview that aired yesterday with the Christian Broadcasting Network, that the crime is treason. Let's take a look. Here is a visibly sweaty and disheveled Trump casually saying, the crime is treason. The crime that Barack Obama committed is treason. Also, the interviewer, David Brody, really makes me cringe with his little interjections. You can tell Brody is one of these suck-ups that just is desperate to be Trump's friend. Here's Trump accusing Barack Obama of treason.
On Obama and the spying situation, this idea that they were spying on your campaign, you've been asked before about what crime he would have potentially committed, but I remember you talking to
treason.
Treason. That's what I was going to ask.
It's treason. Look, look. When I came out a long time ago, I said they've been spying on my campaign. I said they've been taping, and that was in quotes, meaning a modern day version of taping. It's all the same thing, but a modern day version. But they've been spying on my campaign. I told you that a long time ago. Turned out I was right. Let's see what happens to him now. Durham is. I never met Durham because I want to stay out of it because otherwise it's going to look political. But Durham, as you know, is a highly respected person. And Bill Barr is doing a great job as Attorney General. Let's see what they come up with. But they don't have to tell me. All I have to do is read the papers, the insurance policy. In case she doesn't win, we got an insurance policy. Well, that was all the stuff that we went through over the last, let's say, 2.5 years. Now we caught him. We caught him called Strzok and Page, the two lovers. Brennan and Clapper, the way they lied.
Democrats can't stand Barr.
Comey.
They just...
They can't stand who?
Bill Barr. They just think he's political.
You know why? Because he's doing such a good job. Because he's law and order. But he's got them in his crosshairs. And now we have to see what's going to happen. I will say this, if it were reversed, and if the other side sat, we're at the Oval Office, right in that chair behind the Resolute desk, and it was the opposite, 2 years ago, 25 people would have been convicted, and they would be sent to jail for 50 years.
So I want to remind you, we are experiencing hyper-normalization. So I have to state unequivocally, this is not normal. A president accusing a former president of treason is not normal, and it is outrageous. Trump has possibly just months left in his presidency, hopefully, and he is focused on, let's see what William Barr comes up with on treason by Obama and the Obama administration. Now, just to give you a little context, treason laws in the United States exist at the federal level. There's also state treason laws. The definitions are pretty similar. In most states, the treason statutes are similar to federal law, and it's about levying war against the United States, helping the enemies of the United States, giving aid or comfort to enemies of the United States. Only 30 people in history have been charged federally with treason under those laws, extremely rare. It's wild, it's wacky, it's embarrassing for Trump to say it about Barack Obama. They never actually had the goods, and this is a continued sign of desperation. Now, I want to remind you, here is what Trump said when he was asked by the Washington Post's Philip Rucker. It was either 3 years or 3 weeks ago. It's hard to tell right now. No, I think this was during the last 4 to 6 weeks. Philip Rucker asked Trump, when you talk about Obamagate, what crime are you alleging was committed? And Donald Trump says, come on, Philip, you know what it is. Take a look.
Mr. President, in one of your Mother's Day tweets, you appear to accuse President Obama of the biggest political crime in American history by far. Those were your words. What crime exactly are you accusing President Obama of committing, and do you believe the Justice Department should prosecute him?
Obamagate. It's been going on for a long time. It's been going on from before I even got elected. And it's a disgrace that it happened. And if you look at what's gone on, and if you look at now all of this information that's being released, and from what I understand, that's only the beginning. Some terrible things happened, and it should never be allowed to happen in our country again. And you'll be seeing what's going on over the coming weeks. And I wish you'd write honestly about it, but unfortunately, you choose not to do so. Yeah, John, please.
Crime. What is the crime exactly that you're accusing him of?
You know what the crime is. The crime is very obvious to everybody. All you have to do is read the newspapers, except yours.
A true classic moment of the Trump administration. It's really, really terrible that it happened, right? But Mr. President, what is it that happened? You know what it is. You know what it is. I guess now Trump is saying that what happened is treason. So now that we've got the sort of facts out of the way, let's take a step back, because I do think there's an important element of hypocrisy to point to here. And hypocrisy no longer matters to the American right. Maybe it never did. As president, Donald Trump has insisted time and again, he can do whatever he wants. He can say whatever he wants to whoever. He can do whatever he wants. He can't be investigated. These have been the positions of the Trump administration. Trump's entire presidency has been based on the president can do whatever the hell the president wants, period. It's sort of a version of Nixon's, if the president does it, it's not a crime on steroids. So if that's the case, couldn't Barack Obama have done whatever he wanted while he was president? How is it that Trump can do whatever he wants and can't even be investigated, but William Barr can be investigating Obama for treason? Now, what Trump might argue is, well, I'm a sitting president. Obama is no longer president, except Trump has previously argued this never should have even been allowed to happen while Obama was president. And Trump, of course, believes he shouldn't be investigated after being president for things he did while president. So it's complete and total hypocrisy. Now, my question to you is, I researched this today, couldn't find any examples. Has any president in modern American political history accused a former president of treason? I wasn't able to find any examples. I'm asking you for help. If other presidents have done this, please let me know. And we will be covering this extensively on the show's Instagram at David Pakman Show. Also, make sure you're following me on Instagram at david.pakman. If you want to break from the politics, I have a picture of myself holding a teeny tiny puppy over the weekend. It's on my Instagram at david.pakman. It's a beautiful message of peace, love, and understanding in tough times. Or it's just a funny picture of a puppy. You be the judge.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
The David Pakman Show depends on your support, and the easiest way is through membership, which includes the world-famous bonus show, as well as commercial-free audio and video streams of the show just for members. Sign up today at joinpakman.com. Coupon code saves you 40%. Vote soon 18.
Welcome back to the David Pakman Show.
It's great to welcome to the program today Jerry Mitchell, whose stories have helped put 4 Klansmen and a serial killer behind bars. That's an introduction aching for more detail, Jerry. So I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you.
It's great to talk to you, David.
So tell us a little bit about your investigative work. And you wrote the book Race Against Time, which tells the story of Ku Klux Klan murders that went unpunished during the civil rights movement. Talk a little bit about how you got into this space and how this all developed.
Yeah, well, it kind of, a couple things happened in pretty close proximity. The first being I happened to see the movie Mississippi Burning, which is a fictional film about the killings of the 3 young men, the civil rights workers killed by the Klan in Mississippi, James Chaney, Andy Goodman, and Mickey Schwerner. And they were killed on the first day of summer in 1964, which was also part of Freedom Summer, which was very important to the civil rights movement in terms of college students coming down. Andy Goodman was one of those. But basically nobody, the thing that shocked me in watching the film, and I happened to be sitting by an FBI agent, by the way, who investigated the case, which is another wild thing in retrospect. But I was shocked to discover more than 20 Klansmen were involved in that killing, and nobody had ever been prosecuted for murder. That was the part I just couldn't wrap my head around, David.
Was that
You know,
common? I mean, going back, however
yes,
far back you want to go, how common was it that the perpetrators in lynchings, et cetera, were just never prosecuted?
extremely common, but I was woefully ignorant, and I just didn't know. You know, this was all news to me at the time in 1989, and so, you know, I grew up in my little, you know, white bread world and East Texas, and I didn't know any of this, and you know, and so here I am plopped in Mississippi on this new job, and anyway, it's all news to me, and I'm just a lowly reporter, and just, you know, stumbled across this. And so I started reporting about that. And about the same time, I found out about this. I don't know if you're like me, but if someone tells me I can't have something, I want it like a million times worse, right? So there was something in Mississippi called the Mississippi Sovereignty Commission, which was the state segregation spy agency. And there were like 132,000 pages of records that the Mississippi legislature sealed for 50 years. So when I found that out, my first thought was, well, there's something in there, you know, that wouldn't be sealing for 50 years otherwise. So I had developed sources who began to leak me the files. And what they showed was at the same time the state of Mississippi was prosecuting Byron D. LeBeckwith for murdering Medgar Evers, this other arm of the state sovereignty commission was secretly assisting the defense trying to get Beckwith acquitted, and nobody knew that. And so my story ran October 1st to 89, and this, you know, basically the case got reopened. That's kind of the short version.
And when it comes to, I mean, so there's a few cases that you've worked on, so-called cold cases that you start researching on and researching and reporting on. At what point during these, what is the step that makes it so that it is officially reopened and being reinvestigated, that kind of opens the door once again?
Right. Well, in the case of the Medgar Evers case, it was this revelation that helped to kind of pry open that. By the end of it, kind of one thing led to another. Merle Evers asked for the case to be reopened. The newspaper, the Clarion Ledger, where I was working, editorialized for it. The city council voted for it. And then basically the DA's office by the end of the month said he was reopening the case. But it really didn't kind of begin to turn until months later when the discovery of that Beckwith had bragged to a Klansman about killing Medgar Evers. And so that kind of began to turn the tide. It was technically reopened, but didn't look like anything was going to happen. And that's really what did it.
So when you start investigating some of these cases, what type of investigative work are you doing? Are you saying, who can I talk to? Are you interviewing witnesses? Is it a lot of data and research work?
Yeah, well, like, for example, I was able to get a copy of the transcript Merle Evers had shared at the widow of Medgar Evers. And so that was really helpful. I went and interviewed the police officers, for example, that gave Beckwith an alibi, and their story differed from what one of them differed from what he had told back in '64 in the trials.
Now, why would those officers even agree to talk to you?
Well, I guess you'd have to ask them. I don't know. I think someone wrote about me one time, this is years ago, where my hair all went pretty much white or lighter. It said, well, do I look like Opie, you know? So, I mean, I think I came across as kind of a harmless guy, you know, in their eyes, and certainly Southern. So anyway, they welcomed me.
And at different points as these cases start to shift from being unlikely to ever, you know, having a resolution to, hey, this is being looked into, to, hey, there could be charges coming. Do you worry about your personal safety?
Well, my wife at the time certainly did. She was concerned I was going to be killed. And in retrospect, I understand a little better than I did at the time. You know, I mean, here I am going to interview the killer of Medgar Evers, and she was eight months pregnant with our son. So, Yeah, I didn't take it really into account, but speaking of Beckwith, I went and interviewed him, and so yeah, there were some frightening moments. When I interviewed Beckwith, I spent about 6 hours with him. Absolutely, this most racist person I ever spent time with, and it was 6 hours later. It's dark. He insists on walking me out to the car, and I'm like, really? That's okay. So he gets me out of the car. He says, if you write positive things about white Caucasian Christians, God will bless you. If you write negative things about white Caucasian Christians, God will punish you. If God does not punish you directly, several individuals will do it for him.
Right. I was going to say, if it was just going to be left to God, that's one thing. But he's making it clear that
I want to help God out, obviously.
So, I mean, I have so many different aspects of things that I want to ask about. But in your investigation, in some of these conversations, one of the interesting things that at least today is not often told about the history of the civil rights movement, the Mississippi burning case is an interesting example, is that there were a lot of Jewish folks who were working with the civil rights movement. And in fact, sometimes the victims, including in Mississippi burning, are presumed to be Black Americans, but are Jewish folks. Did you, in your work on these cases, also encounter that anti-Semitism was just completely wrapped up with the anti-Black racism?
Oh, yeah. In fact, I'm kind of shorthanding these stories, but when I talked to Byron D. Beckwith, he was really more anti-Semitic than he was anti-Black. Anything that wasn't white, pretty much. But he was a part of what's called Christian identity. And Beckwith was not alone on that. The head of the Klan was also believed this. And Christian identity is essentially just a horrible racist, religion. They believe that Adam and Eve were white people. They believe that all the other non-white races are mud people, quote unquote. They're like animals and have souls. And then they believe, this is where it gets really rank and horribly racist toward the Jews. They believe that Jews are the literal offspring of Satan.
Right. Well, what's interesting about hearing you say mud people, I think it was more than 10 years ago, I interviewed this guy named Glenn Miller, who since has been arrested, of course, for killing people he believed were Jewish, but in fact were not. And I asked him, from your perspective, is the real threat the Black folks or the Jewish folks? And it was sort of like hard for him to even say, like there was just a lot of, it's not even clear he had it straight, but they were all mud people. That's the exact word that he used.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And that was the common term of Christian identity, and that's what they believe. It's they believe that white people are the true Israelites. It just gets very strange, and following the logic of it, there's not really logic. But yes, you are correct. They believe in mud people and very anti-Semitic. There's a really good book there's several good books we could point to, but Blood in the Face, James Ridgway wrote, which talks about, in fact, Beckwith brought that term up to me. That's why they believe it's white people, because white people can blush. And then there's a book Jack Nelson wrote some years ago called Terror in the Night, which is about basically the Klan in Mississippi were originally attacking African Americans as well as white sympathizers. But then they really shifted their focus to attacking the Jews. They began to bomb synagogues, bomb Jewish leaders' homes, and things like that.
Were any of the Klansmen blindsided by charges? In other words, while you were working on stuff, did people start to catch wind of what was going on?
Yeah. They started getting increasingly nervous at times. And/or stop talking to me at certain points, because my idea was to get in there early. I wanted to talk to the killers. I wanted to hear what they had to say and keep them talking. And they're just at certain points. I know we had actually, because Beckwith stopped talking to me, but we had another reporter who went and actually was sitting there almost right when Beckwith he got a call that basically he was going to get arrested. and he was like, they sent the reporter away, and Beckwith and his wife are fuming. And yeah, so it was fascinating, to hear all this as it unfolds.
I think that there will be people who listen to our conversation and they will maybe envision that the era you were investigating was a different era where things, people don't get away with murder in the same way now that they did then. But in fact, in some parts of the country, the murder resolution rate is actually quite low. And there's a lot of good research about this. There's, some more specific ideas about vehicular homicide being a pretty safe way to kill someone if you want to murder them. That's kind of a more niche topic. But generally speaking, it's not like murders are overwhelmingly being solved today, is it?
Yeah, I mean, they're continued. Well, let's be honest about a lot of homicides are. We're not talking about, smart, like carried out by people who, maybe they're angry at the time and there they are and the police catch them with blood on their hands.
Yes.
You know what I mean? What I'm saying is most homicides are relatively easy to solve. You know what I mean? But you're right about the murder resolution rate in terms of the ones that are more difficult to solve. You're right. The rate is not what you would like to see, because, in other words, like if you have any intelligence about it, it's almost easier to get away with murder, if that makes any sense.
We're going to go to a break on the broadcast show, but we're going to continue our conversation with Jerry Mitchell, which you can find in full over on our YouTube channel.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
The David Pakman Show depends on the support of our viewers and listeners, and one way to keep us going is through Patreon, where you can pledge as little as $1 per month or as much as you want at patreon.com/David Pakman Show. Great perks and benefits as well. Read about them.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
Okay, I want to have a conversation with you today in order to maybe focus some of our economic critiques right now and make sure that we're not missing the forest for the trees, I think is the metaphor that makes the most sense. Now, if you like this type of segment, I would love to hear from you about it. If this is not the type of analysis that you find interesting, I'm also glad to hear from you. Here's my thought. We're increasingly seeing individuals like Jeff Bezos and Bill Gates maligned, not just as bad people personally, but as emblematic of the problem, as people sometimes like to say, the problem with our economy in the United States. And there's a lot that I can find to criticize about the way that Jeff Bezos built Amazon and the way that Bill Gates built Microsoft. But I believe that the focus on these types of tech entrepreneurs is really not the lowest hanging fruit that we should be focusing on in order to fix our economy. So I'll set it up for you and then we can kind of talk through it. Bill Gates created Microsoft. Jeff Bezos created Amazon. They've both become obscenely wealthy personally, wealthier than anybody needs to be. Their taxes at the individual level are certainly too low. They should be paying more in taxes. They regularly take advantage of a lack of regulation, which has allowed their businesses to be more profitable. By the way, as an aside, I mean, Bill Gates at this point is not even involved with Microsoft. He's just a philanthropist. So it's kind of backwards looking in terms of Gates, but the analysis is still the same one. So are there criticisms about Bill Gates and Jeff Bezos in terms of their businesses? Of course. I mean, look at Amazon. Amazon working conditions aren't good in many warehouses. They should be paying employees more. In many cases, a lot of the products they sell are manufactured with sweatshop labor in other countries, et cetera, et cetera. Bill Gates and Microsoft took huge advantage of weak antitrust law in the United States during the 90s, I believe it was. You can search YouTube for some of the depositions to learn more about that. And there's other criticisms. But compared to what I believe should be the real targets in order to strengthen and improve our economy, Jeff Bezos and Bill Gates really just shouldn't be the focus, and they're not the evildoers, so to speak, that some make them out to be. Amazon is a huge company that employs a crazy number of people. They've created so many jobs. Should working conditions be improved? Should some of them be getting paid more? Are there problems with how Amazon uses third-party contractors for deliveries and uses that to avoid liability? Of course, and I'm right there with you. But consider the good that Amazon has done. During the pandemic, people are able to safely get the things that they need without leaving their houses. People who live in rural areas and they want to start a business where in their immediate area, it's tough to get the products they need to start that business. Amazon can ship the stuff to them. They've allowed countless small businesses to sell products and be profitable. Microsoft created Windows, which became arguably the catalyst for the personal computing revolution, on which, can we say millions? I mean, tens of millions of jobs are now based in the information industry. So if you want to argue that regulation should be more strict on these companies, that Microsoft should have been broken up, that Jeff Bezos doesn't donate enough money to charity, or that he's richer than anyone should ever be, I'm right there with you. But let me suggest that the focus maybe should be elsewhere. Now, first of all, a lot of what people are criticizing about Jeff Bezos and Bill Gates is not really about Jeff Bezos and Bill Gates. It's about policy. So focusing on them is actually the wrong avenue while we continue to elect a lot of the same people that won't really change anything. But most importantly, the focus should be on the elements of our economy that are completely unproductive and, I would argue, predatory. There's criticisms of Microsoft and Amazon, but they also have done so much good in revolutionizing the world in positive ways. Look at the Bale industrial complex. What does that industry achieve that is productive other than making money off of people in the criminal justice system? What is payday lending achieving other than skimming obscene interest from people who can't pay their bills? What about the financial instruments, including derivatives, derivatives of derivatives, etc., collateralized loan obligations? None of this stuff really adds to the economy. The people making money from these tools will say these are legitimate ways to mitigate risk for large corporations, etc. It's skimming so that a small group of people get rich off of big corporations and rich people hedging some of their risk. Debt collection agencies, the entire debt collection industry, even looking at high frequency trading within mutual funds so that the traders and the fund managers earn huge commissions while they deliver subpar returns to customers that are investing their life savings with them. In the financial space, there are entire categories of products that are not productive for the economy. They don't deliver anything that can be used by people to make a business or to make anybody healthier. These are entire swaths of the economy that just enrich the individuals who come up with and use these mechanisms to extract money for themselves. So to go back to my main point, there is no question that there are serious criticisms of our economy, which can be seen through the fact that people like Jeff Bezos and Bill Gates have achieved such obscene wealth. And when it comes to antitrust regulation, tax rates, whatever else, that's a real conversation to have, and I don't want to belittle it. But Amazon's existence is not where I would focus. I would focus on the entire industries that exist only to leech and skim from hardworking people for no benefit to the broader economy. I believe that's what we should be paying the most attention to and trying to fix. And I want to hear your thoughts. Hey, this is really funny. Just a little bit of a break from the horrible news. You might enjoy this. A bunch of people in the audience have been writing to me saying, David, you should make an account on Cameo, okay, where people can sign up to have me send people a shout out or troll somebody. I got a bunch of Father's Day requests from people saying, hey, please send a shout out to my dad or whoever else. They really like the show. This is all at cameo.com/David Pakman, or you just search my name in the Cameo app. I got an absolutely hilarious request from someone whose friend, I guess, bought one of these online charisma classes and paid $600, and his friend was concerned. So here's the message that I sent him. Take a look at this. Hey, Matt. So I heard from Casey that you spent $600 on an online charisma class. Now, maybe you're very wealthy, and if that's the case, that's fine. but in my experience, you can find a lot of that material for free. And I would even be glad for you to call into my show when I'm taking live calls and talk about what I'm told is maybe a desire to improve some dating skills. Okay, so with total peace and love, if you want to figure out a way to get on my show, you can email me through my website. We'll figure out your phone number so that when we take live calls, if I see your number pop up, we can talk about what's going on. It's free. No $600 for an online charisma class. And hopefully you'll come away with something just as valuable. Okay, so I want to hear from you. So I'm serious. I actually want to hear from Matt. I hope that he will call in. I didn't realize that people actually paid for online charisma classes. I guess I should have realized that because they've been around for a while. Someone must be paying for them, but I would love to have Matt call into the show. We can talk about what's going on. But maybe the funniest part about this is that someone thought that I would be the right person to go to for advice on charisma and maybe dating, which I don't know, something about that is actually even funnier. So now also, I've gotten some requests on Cameo that I had to turn down, people trying to get me to say, anti-Semitic stuff and all of this other stuff. So some are being turned down, but it's a pretty fun platform. You can send me requests in the app. I am David Pakman on Cameo, or you can find me at cameo.com/David Pakman. Okay, we have a voicemail number. That number is 219-2-DAVID-P. This voicemail is a textbook example of straw man, okay? Take a listen to what this caller says in response to my recent story about coronavirus. Take a listen.
Pfizer Day here, calling from Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Watching your show, The David Pakman Show.
Right.
You left out a lot of information. A lot of it is not pragmatic or realistic at all.
Okay.
20,000 people are not dying every day. The reports that you're looking at are invested in by people who have a vested interest of giving you false information.
So remember, what the caller says is 20,000 people are not dying every day. Let's continue.
You're using that false information incorrectly. It's just shameful. I live down here. I go back and forth to the beach every day.
Right.
People are having a great time. They're enjoying their life. There's no sirens on a daily basis letting us know that people are dying at a massive, aggressive rate.
Okay.
You want to talk with me and contact me, I can give you facts and proof and video feeds, show you what's actually going on, regardless of somebody who had some money and fingers placed into an investment of marketing the wrong idea that you seem to support.
Right. So they say, David, you're wrong. 20,000 people aren't dying. Yeah, I never said 20,000 people are dying. I said 20,000 or 25,000 cases are being found each day in the United States, and that's true. So this is what's called a straw man, arguing against an argument I never made. David, you're wrong that 20,000 people are dying. Never said 20,000 people are dying. Says there's no sirens in Florida letting us know people are dying. I never said there were sirens in Florida letting us know people were dying. What I'm saying is we have data available. If anything, the data is understating the severity of the problem. So guys, do not make straw man arguments. It looks bad. It's not good. Argue against what I say rather than what you claim that I said. We've got a great bonus show for you today. Become a member to get instant access at joinpakman.com. We will talk about an incredible story from a hair salon about masks and coronavirus and so much more. I will see you on the bonus show if you are a member. If not, I'll see you tomorrow. Thanks so much for watching today's episode. Just a reminder, today's sponsor, Blue Chew, is giving you your first shipment completely free. All you have to do is pay $5 shipping. Go to bluechew.com and use the promo code DAVID. I've put a link right underneath this video.